Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Leaving the United States. No, Black Babes Abroad.
Both.
Yes,
Tagline.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put that on a t-shirt, right?
Yes.
Listen, we're working on it.
Merch.
We're actually
Absolutely.
working on it.
Speak it into existence. It's coming sooner than we think.
Yes, stay tuned, y'all. So today we are going to be talking about France, more specifically Paris, with Tanisha. Tanisha, um, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We are all learning so much about how to live our best lives, where to go, how to get there. It's been really exciting.
Hmm. Hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my goodness, literally, thank you. Thank you. So, I think it would be great to start at the beginning. Can you share your story of how you got to Paris?
So how I got to Paris was my first solo international trip in 2017, at the end of 2017. And for me, I'm a Detroit girl, right? And I have always loved fashion. So I was like a teenager looking through these magazines, Vogue, Essence, Bazaar, whatever, Elle. And so the places that were always talked about was Paris and Milan, Italy,
Hmm.
right? And so I always kind of wanted to go to Paris, but had never quite been. Just a series of events, right? Like in earlier that year, 2017, my husband passed away after a long illness. And then I booked my first solo international trip. Now, my late husband and I had traveled a lot, but we had not made it to Paris, right? So I booked my first solo trip here at the in October of 2017, and I came here and I absolutely fell in love with it. Just it was like everything that I thought it would be. And Paris is one of those places people either love it or they hate it.
Hmm.
There's no middle ground.
No,
There's no
no.
People are either like, oh, it's dirty, it's nasty. Why does the Eiffel Tower, not have sidewalks? Or people love it,
Mhm.
or they love it. It's no in between. So I was on the love it side, and I kept coming back and coming back and coming back. So that's kind of, I like to say, like, Paris found me in a way.
Hmm. Hmm. I
And
love
when you came to, because you got your visa for Paris in 2022, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I got my visa in 2022. So I traveled here for years, right? Like off and on. I, had been many places, but I would always come back to Paris. Paris was my favorite place. I would be in the US, like, when am I going back? Like, I can't wait to go back. So I realized that like I just was more happy here. And I've
hmm.
been many places during that time. Like, I've been to many other countries, right? At one point, I thought I was moving to Tulum. You cannot tell me that I was
Hmm.
not moving to Mexico. Like,
Hmm.
during the panini, as I like to call it, during the panini, I felt like I risked it all, and like I went to Tulum. I think it might have been, what year was that? Maybe 20. It was either 2020 or 2021. I don't remember which, but I went on that trip, and it was before the vaccine, so maybe it was might have been might have been the end of 2020. And so I went there, checked it out. I'd already been to Mexico before, but like not Tulum, right? And there were a lot of people, a lot of Black Americans were moving there, right? And
Hmm.
so I went there, thought it would be it might be a possibility, but it just wasn't. It was good, it was cool, but I couldn't really see myself living there. And no shade to people who live in Mexico. Mexico, it's a lot of us who live there,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
it just didn't work out quite for me. And so I traveled other places, but I still kept coming back to Paris. And when they would not let us go to Paris as Americans, like, I was in shambles, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And so as soon as they let us come back in 2021, I was like, okay, I immediately booked a flight, because again, it was one of my favorite places to go. And
Yeah.
so I, and let me back up a little bit. in 2018, I thought in my mind, I was like, I could live here. I really could
That
live
was
here.
when the seed was planted.
Right.
Exactly. It was. That was when the seed was planted because I loved it that much.
I
Okay.
I mean, many things and questions and revelations coming up. So thank you for that, Tanisha. But just to highlight two things. One, that you had the opportunity, and of course it is the privilege, but also taking the initiative and the opportunity to travel and try things out. I think if you can afford to do that, that alleviates so much of, I think, the stress and pressure we put on to find the one perfect place that we've never been to, we haven't stepped foot in, we don't know the language, right? It's like taking time to test it out and say, how do I feel here? Could I see myself here? And let there be space for it. If you can do that, I think is such an incredible way to go about it, because you don't know what you don't know. And to that point, I know I was making a little joke because I also lived in Paris for a year, outside of Paris for a year, and I loved it. It was also a dream of mine. And I knew by the end of the year that was not the place for me, but
Okay.
I knew it so clearly, right? Like
Okay.
I
Yeah.
still love all of my time there and love it. But for me, it was not the place. But that's
Okay.
why I think that's also important. We're all different. We're all going to
Right.
thrive in different places. It's
Right.
not to say if everybody's going to Tulum and you don't feel called to Tulum, there's nothing wrong with you, right? Like
Exactly.
same with Paris. It's like, I'm so glad I tried it out. So I'm not sitting here like, oh, what if it was Paris? What if it was Paris? What if it
Right.
was somewhere else? So I
Right.
think that's just a reminder sometimes, is everybody, and what we'll get to soon in this conversation, of like what your checklist was. And of course, your passion brought you to Paris initially, but
Right.
also coming from a more serious and grounded place of like, how does this new spot check these boxes for me to feel
Exactly.
comfortable creating a life somewhere else? It's not like a light thing to do. Traveling, light. Creating a
Right.
life somewhere else, a bit more
It's
dense, right?
heavy. It's heavy. It's
Heavy.
heavy. It is.
So I just love the experimentation. I just think it's a great example for those who can, is to relieve some of that so that you can go in with a fuller heart and in a more stable mind. Because there's so many things you don't know about a place or a city until you're there.
Actually, and you're
And
right. I had traveled here so much, but it was like I traveled here so much during the summer of 2022, spent a
Yeah.
month here, right, on my a scouting trip, right?
Yeah.
But visiting and living in the place are two totally different things, right? Like you're no
Mm-hmm.
longer the tourist. And I
Mm-hmm.
can remember talking to like a very select few group of people about my plans to move. And I was like mulling it over at the time. Okay. I
Yeah.
was I was even though I had said years ago I wanted to come here, I was like, okay, do I do it? Do I not? And someone told me, they were like, if you don't like it, you can move back.
Just move back. That's what I'm always like.
I mean, and I
But
was
in our
like,
head, we're like,
right,
impossible. Because you know what? A lot of it is like, how embarrassing. Oh, how embarrassing would it be that I thought I could live in Paris? I come home. Well, babe, you still got to Paris. So not as
exactly,
embarrassing. Like when we think about it, it's
exactly,
like we can always go back, but why not try something more and to be
absolutely.
bold to take that step? I love that so much.
this
Absolutely. That
brings
was that was
up
my mindset.
This brings up a series of things. Okay, so we're going to take one of those like gentle detours that we talked about because you brought up something that I think we need to discuss.
Okay.
Before we dive into that, because we need to talk about scouting trips. Before we talk about scouting trips, for people that are thinking, oh, well, it's so, I would love to travel to places, even though getting over that fear of traveling solo, I think is a very big thing, especially for Black
Sure.
women,
Hmm.
marginalized women in general, but especially Black women.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that another outside of that initial fear, something that a lot of people are also very concerned about is the price tag. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Plane tickets from the United States out tend to be incredibly expensive. And in my experience, mind you, with the current administration, things are changing rapidly.
Right. Right.
So keep an eye out. But in
Mm-hmm.
my experience, I was able to, and not that long ago, just a couple years ago, I was able to get a round trip ticket to Costa Rica and back to New York, technically New Jersey, for $300
Yep. Yep.
trip
Yep.
tickets. and I wasn't like inside the bathroom stall. So there are way, right? It's like, oh, look at that. I get treated like a human. I get to keep my legs and I get to see a new country and I'm not breaking the bank.
That's what I was
Um,
just going to say is when I found a lot of coming from California and visiting my family in Boston, those flights are comparable, if not more expensive, to when I fly from Copenhagen to LA. And
exactly.
people and
Exactly.
my friends don't believe me. And I'm like, no, like
No,
that trip to Miami you just took, Mama, you could have been in London and
Yes.
back.
no, yep. No, and no one believes me either. And it was a point in time, it was a period in time, it was a glorious time now when I was going back and forth to Paris so much because my flight would be like 400, $500,
Hmm. Hmm.
550, like USD round trip. Now, I might have been enrolled like 100, okay, but I was on the plane. I was
Yeah,
on the plane.
Exactly. And
you still got there.
you could still occasionally get tickets like that, but you just kind of
Hmm.
have to look out for the low season. If you're looking
Right.
for my hot tip, if you are looking for flights to warmer places, more tropical climates, book around the rainy season. The tickets will be less expensive if you book around the rainy season. If you're looking for places that aren't necessarily tropical, there's always going to be a quiet time. There's going to be the
Hmm.
hot tourist season, and then there's going to be a quieter time. Go during the quieter time. That will be less expensive. You could still, like, I've been able to get round trip tickets to and from Barcelona for like 400, not 400, but like 450, $500 now. But that's only booking around those quieter low seasons.
And
Okay.
for a exploring type of trip, I was just talking to a friend about this in another way, but going during the not hot best time of the
Yes.
season place, then you can get closer to what that place feels like on the off season to
Yes.
live in,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
you can of course go to Paris in the high season when the spring is out and the flower and you're
Yep.
like, yes, I love it.
Yes.
Mama, when it's November in Paris and it's raining, do you still love it? Is the question, right? So I think it's also another way of going in the off season, both for your wallet, but for you to be like, okay, can I still find enough things that feel good and feel nurturing without the hubbub also of tourists to kind of ruin it, but like the hubbub of everything happening? Can I still find that sense of closer to home, right? I think it's also
Right.
important. And yeah, it helps with the wallet. So
It
Perfect
does. Absolutely.
segue into, oh, so sorry. Perfect segue into talking about scouting trips. So please continue, Tanisha.
No, I mean, yeah, I definitely, I'm a fan of taking scouting trips, right? Like, I know some people are like, oh, I got to go, I got to get out, just whatever. I'm like, you really need to find out if you like the place. Like, and I get it. I get people who are like, but you're already there. I'm in America. I need to leave. But I'm like, yeah, girl, but you need to see if you actually like to live there.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be very potentially expensive depending upon how you move. Like I moved with like I had 1 foot out and 1 foot in. And when I say that, I mean at the time I left, I my partner here invited me to Paris, right? And so I did not give up my place in Atlanta. I rented it out, right? I did not give up certain things because I just wasn't. I knew I loved it, but I needed to be sure. So I
Yeah.
highly recommend scouting trips.
Absolutely. And a good part is if you have a friend, a beautiful friend like Tanisha, a scouting trip can also be visiting, right? Like I have
Yes.
so many friends who are like, they'll stop by Denmark and then they actually start loving Denmark, but they'll stop by Denmark to go somewhere else in Europe and be like, oh, could I like this place? Could I do this or whatever? But
Right,
that's also just like a fun way of making a scouting trip. So
right.
use your resources, of course, and we hope that this is a resource for many people as well, but as if you can afford to. And again, I just think about the money I was spending on car payments and gas where I'm like, I could have been round trip
Listen,
these places just to try it out. And also to the I don't want to understate the nervous system regulation and release you can get from just getting out of a constricting scenario that can be the states for many people, just for a trip to let yourself regulate and then to come with
yes,
a fuller sense of self to make such a big decision, I think is critical. And I don't want to understate it because so many of my friends are like, no, I'll do all the planning here, but I'm like, you're in a mindset that can't even conceptualize
it's
what you might be looking for the next place. So get somewhere that you can relieve of that to your point, Tanisha, at least get one foot in, one foot out, right? At
Right.
least have that space, because I feel like I wasn't even able to think about what I wanted to build out of this new life until I got out of kind of my old life in that way.
And you are so right when you say that, because I mean it's top tier. It really is, because I feel like when you get to the place, like you said, you don't realize how stressed and traumatized you are until you actually leave and you can breathe. And people always are
Mm-hmm.
asking me like, "Oh, well, why you move there?" Da, 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 da. But I know my emotional nervous system,
You don't have
okay?
to worry, babes. I'm good.
Right, right. I know this is where I can breathe, I can live. And to be honest with you, even going to the airport, I began feeling stressed to go
Yeah.
back to the US because that
Uh-huh.
attitude is there. Okay? It's on
Mm-hmm.
the plane.
I
Okay?
grab my
So
purse closer. I'm like, oh, here we
exactly.
go.
Here we go. Here we
Here
go.
we
I
go.
TSA
don't
and
know what.
immigration will make you feel like you are back in the United States.
I'm
That
just like,
part.
grab my purse. I'm like, just get me to the taco place so this whole trip can be worth it. Or else I'm like, what am I even doing? Oh,
Even like you said, Shayna, to your point, like, I'll be on Air France, and the agent, oh, so what do you do? Like, girl, if you don't look at this passport and this visa and stamp it and let me go about my way, like, why are you asking me? Like, what does this have to do with me getting on that plane? Now, you have to be like very approach it very delicately, right? Because they can literally tell you you cannot get on there. It's up to
yeah.
their discretion. So it's almost like, how do I play this? Because why is this woman asking me what it is that I do? My ticket is already purchased. All you need to do is see this visa here and this
Yeah.
passport. That's it.
It's so it's so funny. I don't know, Tanisha, because you've been traveling for a while, but have been living for the past 2 years, right? But I've just noticed my travels in and out of the U.S. and Denmark. When I'm coming into the States, they're like, "Oh, they used to be, oh, you're living in Denmark. What brought you there?" Blah blah blah. Now, when I go back to Denmark, there were before they would see my license or see my passport, and be like, "Oh, from California. Why are you in Denmark? That's so silly. What are you doing here?" Now they're like, "Come here. Are you okay?" Please, please come in. Please come in. They're like, it just the switch. They used to be like, why would an American be in Denmark? How silly. And now they're like,
I, I,
come here, my sweet child.
I think people finally get it now. And I have
Yeah.
friends, not all my friends travel. I have one friend in particular. She does not do a lot of traveling or international traveling, but she told me recently, like, girl, I get it. And she's even looking at places, right? Before this
Yeah.
wasn't even a conversation that we would even have. She's always
Mm-hmm.
been proud of me for traveling. We've been friends for a long time. So she's seen my journey. But
Yeah.
I think people get it now. They finally
They get
get
it.
it. And we don't have to explain
Or in
as
the very
much.
least,
No.
they're more open to it now.
Right,
Like
right.
before when I was solo traveling and telling people I'm getting out, I don't care how. I mean, I do care how, but I'm getting out. It was just a lot of, oh, well, Shayna, you got to be careful. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Okay. Well, you love it. I like it. Or
Just
you,
projecting their doubts, their own doubt,
Projecting.
right,
just
right, right.
just
Or
projecting. And you're like, just because you're scared doesn't mean I'm scared. I don't,
Exactly.
one of my favorite quotes that I actually think is from RuPaul's Drag Race, but I digress, is I understand your concern. I just don't have it for myself. And I'm like,
Oh, I have to steal that one. That's
that
wonderful.
I'm like, because you realize, and I think this is important to touch on, Shayna, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Tanisha, of like, you can just hear when people are like, I could never do that. I could never do that. And
Yep,
that's what they're projecting
yep.
onto you. And people would say to me, like, oh, you're just so adventurous. You're just so bold. And I'm like, no, I'm also very intuitive and know that I need to get myself out. It's not just about being fun and free and bold and all of that stuff. I think at a deeper level, people understand the work and the mental and emotional strife, but also belief it takes to take your ass abroad and to make a new life. That it's not just a fun little frilly system. Like it's very
Right,
serious.
right.
So put some respect on on our names in that way, and also like love it for you if you want to stay, but we're not. And I think now probably you've experienced too, Shane, is like people see. I think seeing examples now, especially with social media, like
Yes.
seeing examples of people who've done it and who've done it successfully and who are much happier than they were before and building that life, like that sometimes is more telling than you talking to your friend being like, girl, it's amazing, blah, 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 blah. But like people actually seeing it, I think has shifted because we were told, all of us in some ways, I'm sure we're told, like, that's impossible. You have to have lots of money. You have to get very lucky. It's going to
Exactly.
be scary. It's going to be this. You're going to hate it. You're going to miss home. And I'm like, I don't know if I've ever felt all of that. I think that was a lot of projection, from
It's
others.
it's a lot of projection, and unfortunately, it's a lot of projection that people are still consuming as truth. The most common comment that I get, regardless of the social media platform that I'm on, is when I say, listen, consider moving abroad, get your passports, get your everything, so just in case. Or, hey, you should really start thinking about where you, Shayna, I'm stuck here. There's no way out.
I
I don't
can't do
have
it. Yeah.
enough
Or
money. I have
right.
this, I have that. I have, it's consider it multiple sclerosis. It's not multiple sclerosis, but I get the exact same treatments and my symptoms are similar. So I just tell people for the sake of ease, it's technically neuromyelitis optica. I just say multiple sclerosis. I am living abroad with multiple sclerosis. There is a way, and I am not anywhere close to a millionaire. If you are creative and if you are attentive and if you know what your list of must-haves are, and if you are forward thinking and okay, these are the things that I need, these are the treatments that I need, these are the kind of doctors that I need to get in contact
Right.
with. If I have to save up for something, these are the things that I'm willing to drop some more money on, but healthcare
Mhm.
abroad is exponentially cheaper than healthcare in the United States. So no matter how much you think you're going to be spending abroad,
It's going to be less,
it
probably.
will be less.
It,
Here's
And
the
I
point I
ran all and I ran the numbers, right? It's like I'm 50 years old, right? I'm closer. I've got more years, behind me, maybe than in front of me, right? So when you run those numbers, and healthcare is a huge one, that alone is enough to, keep me in a country that has
Mhm.
affordable healthcare that isn't tied to your employment, that's not, you know,
Mhm.
like it's not the healthcare is not monetized, right? It's not corporate healthcare.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
people just like you said though, they project. The other thing you hear, especially when it comes to Black women, especially when it comes to us, it's always, well, why are you going over there? Well, why don't you
Uh,
go here? Well, there are no Black and brown people there. And I'm always like, listen, I don't care where you go. Go wherever makes you happy. Just go if you want to. Because at the end of the day, we all have to be happy wherever we are. But please just get out, travel, like see some different
Mm.
things than just, going to Miami, or what I'm trying to say, you got to crawl before you can walk. But
mhm.
don't rain on my little travel parade over here.
Yeah. Tanisha, we will not have time for this, but I think it goes into making a list and trying places out and knowing that not every place has to be perfect for you.
Exactly.
But wow, that unlocked a lot of people and a lot of like, I know shame I had of like moving to a historically white country where there was a
Hmm.
lot of me of like, does that make like challenging my blackness? Does that make me less black that I don't want to immediately go to an African country? What does that say about me? What is it? And it's all of the stuff that I think can get wrapped up. But again, I think when you're going into such a beautiful opportunity to build a new space, you gotta think of what feels good
Exactly.
to you and let
Yeah.
out everything out. And I think that's actually a perfect segue to what your list was, Tanisha, for what was your kind of list for the next place that you were going to go when you were doing these scouting trips? What were you looking for? I know you already talked about, kind of running the numbers with healthcare, but what else was on your list?
I mean, so I was looking for a place for culture, right? That had a
Mhm.
culture that I actually, I like to do things. I like to, new restaurants, art galleries, exhibits. I'm always
Mhm.
doing different stuff. So I really wanted to go somewhere with things that, had things that I wanted to do. I'm also a dancer. So I would come here to Paris to dance. And so
Yes.
that was a big part of it too. This particular form of dance that I do, it's a lot of people here who do that dance. And so it was like this was like Paris was that girl for me.
Yeah.
It really was. So, also I needed to be in an international city with, because I knew that I wanted to travel from here. So I didn't want to go somewhere where I was like, it's
So
no
far from the
international
airport.
airport. I mean,
Yes.
it's a Tulum airport at the time. They didn't even have an airport, and it was like an hour ride from. I think it was it Playa to Tulum, like bus, like
Oh,
Oh yeah.
it
yeah,
was
it's
at
from
that time.
Cancun and then you drive
Cancun,
through. I
right?
used
You're
to live in
right.
Playas. It's a
Okay,
you had a
yeah.
journey.
It's a
Oh gosh,
journey.
yeah.
I mean, they opened the airport now, but it was like I had to think about all those things. Like,
So
okay,
smart.
how easy is it going to be for me to see other places from here?
Mhm.
And I look at it like here I am, like I went to South Africa over the fall. Like I have gone to, so many places. Turkey is not far, 3 hour
Mhm.
plane ride. I've been to like
Yeah.
Belgium, Amsterdam, London is, 2 hours away by train.
Yeah.
It's all these places that are really, really close.
Mhm.
And yeah, it had to meet certain check boxes.
I
And
love that. Yeah,
with
a
this,
great
I would,
note for travel. Oh no, just saying international airports. If you're going to live there, it's a big one. I consistently go back
Yeah.
to of why I wouldn't move like farther into the outskirts of in Denmark. I'm like, no, no, no. I need to be close to airports to get in, to get out, to have other people get in very
Hmm.
easily and out. So another point. Sorry,
Exactly.
Shayna, go on.
no, all good. With this, I want to circle back to something that we were talking about before because we know what a scouting trip is, but this is lingo that a lot of people might not be familiar with. So I would love to talk about not just what a scouting trip is, but what are some of the key components that we have found useful in organizing a scouting trip. Because a scouting trip is different than a vacation, is different than packing up all of your bags and moving somewhere.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
I'm going to give my like general definition of a scouting trip, and then I would love to hear, and I'll like jump in every now and then too, but I would love to hear what our recommendations are for planning a scouting trip for the people that are interested in doing that would be. So a scouting trip is a shorter form trip where and then not to say that that's like 2 days. I've had scouting trips that were a week. I've had scouting trips that were a month. That can be vetting a specific city. That could be vetting multiple cities in a country. But it's a trip that you use to gather the on-the-ground information to see, is this somewhere that I could live and invest in long term?
Yeah.
So if you don't know what a scouting trip is, that's like a general definition of a scouting trip. And there's no, I won't say that there is no wrong way to do a scouting trip, but there's a lot of right ways to do a scouting trip. So, as you guys were doing your scouting trips for the countries that you were vetting or maybe that you moved to, whether that be the country that you're in now or other countries, what were some things that were helpful retrospectively when it came to organizing your scouting trip in the practice and the reality of that scouting trip? Um, yeah, like what would be your recommendations for people that were like, you know what, I think I do want to take a scouting trip to here. I don't know what that means though. Yeah.
I think for me, it means, trying to be in an area where you think you may want to live or an area perhaps you can rule out, right? So I did two scouting trips. I did one month in August of 2022 with my daughter. And initially I was hoping my daughter would move here. She had just finished undergrad and she did not like Paris at all. She does not like Paris. She's really clear that she does not like Paris. So for her, it was a scouting trip and she discovered that she does not like it. Um, I then came back to the US and then came back again for 2 more months. So it was like, and I stayed in a different location. And it was a way, again, I kind of did it like with one foot in the US and 1 foot out. And that second scouting trip was like 2 months. And I,
Mm.
loved it. Different area. It was great. So if you can, I highly suggest people try to, if you can do a month or so, if you can do a couple weeks. I don't, again, don't suggest moving someplace sight unseen if you can help it.
Mhm. Do you have any recommendations, Candace?
So now that I think back, I don't know if I've ever gone to gone into a trip like this is a scouting trip. Because but I kept kind of growing in when I was going abroad. So, for example, the first time I probably went abroad was to Mexico on like a vacation for a week. And I was like, okay, this is cute. This is fun. And it was just like me getting comfortable with being abroad in a different place. Right. Then I studied abroad in Australia for 6 months. And I was like, okay, 6 months. How do I feel? And for me, it was enough to get into the culture. But I remember being like, if I ever want to try out a place again, I want to stay for a year. Now, these were all because I was studying abroad or doing something else. So when I was in Paris for a year, I was like, I will have a good circuit trip. And then if I love it, then I'll know and I'll stay for a year. And I didn't at that point. I was like, I love that I did this, but I'm ready to kind of move on to the next chapter. So with Denmark, I did visit a few times, but again, it was for visiting my partner because we were at, long distance at that point. So I was like on vacation mode. And I'm not taking my own advice because I only came during the summer because I was like, Denmark in the winter sounds dreary. And it is.
Mhm.
And so I didn't do like a Danish winter until I lived here and committed. However, I think because I had still had an experience and I had a partnership, right? So I had a foundation where I was like, okay, even if I hate it, we already had the understanding that we would figure out a new place if I hated it. We already knew like, okay, I'm coming in a little bit blind, so we had an exit plan if needed. But I think additional to what we talked about before is like getting the cheap flights, going in the off season,
Yeah.
everything I've learned about being here has been through conversation at a bar with a very incredible local who was just excited to chat. Like I
Yeah.
swear, and I think with the internet now, we have so many more resources of like you can even do those like walk along, like walking in Tulum and just like see the
Yeah.
city and
Yeah.
learn about what people like. And I would look at like the most welcoming international environment, go to that bar, kick up a conversation, talk to people, and be like, hey, I'm thinking about moving here. What do you like? What do you hate? Right? Like, I think so many people I've found, at least it's worked for me, talking to the locals is like the quickest way to kind of
Right.
unlock it because the locals will also tell you, like, they'll be like, it's dirty, it's gross, it's this,
Right.
but they'll
Right.
also tell you there's incredible museums and you should try this. And oh, well,
Mhm.
how long are you here for? Then you can do this. Like, all of those like little plugs and stuff I've gotten from locals, but again, from going to the spaces that I knew were going to be more welcoming to tourists, because there's not always those spaces. So going to the international places where you feel comfortable and kicking up conversation, I think is like a tip that's worked really well for me.
Yes. And for the people that, because I always see them in the comment section, for the people that have this fear of, okay, well, what if I go there and then people are racist towards me? Or what if I go there and I have a bad experience? It's like, that can happen anywhere. That
What if
happens.
you go down the street and someone raised, that's what I honestly tell. I'm like, but what if you go out of this conversation, you log off of Zoom and you go to the supermarket and something racist happens to you? What were you going to do?
Yeah.
Probably the same thing.
Hmm.
Like what would you do? And I think that, and we've talked about this before, it's a lot of that fear is I've realized reading myself here, a lack of self-trust in myself that I can handle the situations that come near me. Because
Mm.
we can't foresee what's going to happen. But if I trust myself to know that, to feel safe, to approach things in a safe way, to get myself out of situations that I might not feel safe in, like, then a lot of that other fear of what might happen, I'm like, babes, that could literally happen tomorrow in America. It's in most places, it's probably more likely it's going to happen tomorrow in America than in other places. But again, you can't, I've done this. I carried a lot of that American stress to Denmark. It took me
Yes.
years to drop that. And you don't realize you're making up a lot of threats that I'm not saying they're not there, but you don't know that they are. So if that's your one thing that is stopping you from going abroad or trying stuff out, that's much more of a mental emotional thing than the safety of that country at that point, shall I say.
Couple
I
of,
think there's
sorry, I just want to create a couple of like a couple of what is it called practical steps that people can use in creating an itinerary of sorts for their potential scouting trips. One, use Facebook groups. Use Facebook groups to figure out if you're like, okay, I'm thinking about this country, but I don't know any of the cities outside of the capital. Go to Facebook groups, ask the questions. There are locals from all over the country that will let you know, hey, I recommend here, but you also need to know what we were talking about before. What are your non-negotiables? For example, do you have an autoimmune disease where you have to be close to a certain kind of hospital? Do you want to drive? Do you want to live in a walkable city? Do you want to be where it's hot? Do you want to be where it's colder? You need to know what those non-negotiables are, what that short list is, so that way you can go to that Facebook group or you can conduct your own research so you can figure out what those cities are that might be best for you. And then once you have that list of cities or neighborhoods that you think would be best for you, after you book that trip, be open to change and let it be known that that change will not break your bank. You will be able to say, okay, I've done it. Where when I was scouting Mexico for a month, I went to 4 cities. One of those cities, I spent less than 24 hours in, and I cried almost the entire time. And I said, I
Out.
can't. And then I got a bus ticket and I went to a new city. And I said, I'm gonna figure it out. And it was and it was not cheap, it was inexpensive to do it. And I really enjoyed the next city that I went to. I made friends. I extended my stay there a little bit longer. I didn't end up moving there, but allow yourself the flexibility to say, okay, if not this, then have somewhere else to visit, which is why a
Mhm.
short list of cities, of neighborhoods, of all these things are important to have. And know that it won't break the bank unless you want it to break the bank. Um, and along with talking to locals, if you can start gathering little pieces of the local language, whatever that is,
Yes.
that will
Yes.
help you to, because not just with the international community, which is always great to get tapped into, but because the international community might have a lot of information, but the locals will always have more. And
The
you want
right
to know what
information.
Yes,
Yes.
you always want to know what the temperature is, what is going on, where to go for the things that are on your list from the locals. The internationals will have a lot, the locals will always have more, but it all depends on what you are looking for and how you organize that list. So, um, ooh,
Amazing button.
yes, we are slowly running out of time, unfortunately. Tanisha, question for you. Where can people find you? How can
People
we
can,
how can we plug you? Do you have any stuff going on? Let the people.
um, I do have a few things going on. You can follow me on my YouTube channel. It's where I talk about my life abroad, traveling, a little bit of politics, all kind of different things. You can find me on YouTube. It's the spelling of my name, Tanisha, TENISHA underscore Mercer, MERCER. That's the best way to find me. One of the things that I am doing is helping other Black women to move abroad. It is not France specific. So it doesn't matter if you want to go to Ghana or if you want to go to Fiji or wherever you want to go. I do offer coaching and consulting for for Black women who want to move abroad. So check
Amazing.
me out on YouTube and just within social media. It's Tanisha Mercer on Facebook, also on TikTok. So check me out.
Yes, all the
We
links
will.
for Candace and Tanisha will be below. So excited to have you guys, and I will see you all later. If you have any questions, type them below. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.